I think now is the time for the Opportunity Zone industry, for all of its stakeholders to start pushing for a huge effort to make Opportunity Zone legislation a huge priority in whatever tax legislation comes through in 2025, because that is the year that the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provisions start to expire. Welcome to today's OZ Insiders webinar, Opportunity Zones Legislation Updates. I'm Jimmy Atkinson. I am the founder of OpportunityDB, the host of the Opportunity Zones podcast. I'm also the host of OZ Insiders, my new Opportunity Zone mastermind group for high-performing Opportunity Zone professionals and investors. Let's dive in. Before this webinar ends, here's what I'm going to walk you through today. Here's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you what's inside the Opportunity Zone Reform Bill. Chances are, if you've been following my podcast or following my webinar series for the past year and a half or so, you may have heard a lot of this information. So this might be repetitive for you, but always good to revisit what's inside the OZ Reform Bill. So you know, as whether you're an investor or a fund manager or you have clients you can take this information to. I'll just give you the basics. I'll give you some updates on the Reform Bill's progress, including some of the key people in Congress who are involved. We'll also talk about a timeline, my realistic best guess as to when OZ legislation could be enacted, and how you can help. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm also going to overview my Opportunity Zone mastermind group, OZ Insiders, which just passed 40 members a few days ago. So that's going really strong. I'll tell you a little bit about OZ Insiders, what's inside, and why it might be a good fit for you. Plus a special bonus offer for anyone who joins today. I have a special offer for anybody who joins OZ Insiders today. I'll tell you a little bit more about that if you wait till the end of today's presentation. I have an hour blocked off for today's presentation. I think we can probably wrap up in about 45 minutes or so, depending on how many questions I get, just for your information. Quick legal disclaimer. Nothing we do here is considered investment advice or should be considered investment advice. Please consult with a professional investment advisor before making any investment decisions or tax-based decisions. I update this chart on this webinar that I do here every month. This is the S&P 500. I'm going to keep updating this as long as it keeps going up. This is one of the many reasons why I'm super excited about Opportunity Zones. Coming off a pretty bad year, 2023 was a down year for Opportunity Zone investing in terms of the sheer amount of investments made into Opportunity Zones and qualified opportunity funds. The real estate market's undergoing a little bit of trouble. Interest rates are really high. There's a lot of uncertainty in the market, but this chart here of the S&P 500 gives me a lot of optimism, gives me a lot of hope for the future of Opportunity Zones. Because at the end of the day, Opportunity Zones is a capital gains-based tax incentive investing program, and you need gains to invest in Opportunity Zones. And the S&P 500 is up 82% over the last 5 years. It keeps hitting new records every day. This graph's from the end of February, nearly at 5,100, record high for the S&P 500. So I think there's some good promise promise of some renewed energy in Opportunity Zones from stock market investors, hopefully later this year. And I do think with interest rates coming down, there's a little bit of optimism for Opportunity Zones. That brings me to my first commercial break. I want to tell everybody about OZ Pitch Day, which is coming up. We have over 200 people registered for this webinar that I'm doing right now, which we're turning into a podcast episode as well. We have well over 600 people registered for OZ Pitch Day. But if you are here right now and you're not registered for OZ Pitch Day, I think you'll really enjoy OZ Pitch Day, and I would encourage you to register for OZ Pitch Day as well. We're doing it on Thursday, March 7th. Later this week, it is a free online event for Opportunity Zone investors, for advisors, or for other Opportunity Zone professionals and stakeholders who want to learn more about Opportunity Zones and get access to privately offered Opportunity Zone funds and Opportunity Zone deals that you won't find anywhere else. And there's just a sampling of the happy, handsome faces that will be presenting with me during the course of that day. You can check out the agenda and see a list of all the speakers and all of the different deals that are going to be presented on Thursday, March 7th by scanning that QR code, or head to ozpitchday.com to get started there. It's free to register, and you can come and go as you please throughout the course of the day. So just had to talk about OZ Pitch Day briefly there. We're going to get into OZ legislation in a moment, but I wanted to show you an overall timeline of the Opportunity Zones universe, so to speak, what's transpired to date and what might be to come. So here's the UR here that you see at the directory at the mall. This is where we are in the mall right now. We're just into the third month of 2024. In case you haven't checked a calendar recently, I've got March 5th, 2024. So we're closer to the finish line than we were to the starting flag here. But I'll just walk through each major time point one by one. Opportunity zones came into effect when President Donald Trump signed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. He did so on December 22nd, 2017. That is when Section 1400Z of the Internal Revenue Code officially went into effect. That gave a period of time to the governors of every state, of every overseas territory, and the mayor of Washington, D.C. a chance to nominate up to 25% of their low-income census tracts as opportunity zones. And as a result, in July of 2018, just a few months later, we had over 8,700 opportunity zones designated. Now, final regulations weren't issued by the IRS until close to 2 years after the passage of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That took place on December 19th, 2019. That cleared up a lot of questions that funds and investors and businesses had about opportunity zone investing. And that's when the marketplace really started going full throttle. The 15% basis step up expired just a few days later at the end of that year. We had a COVID pandemic in these intervening 2 years here. There were some extensions I didn't bother putting on the timeline, but it's good to know. The 10% basis step up expired at the end of 2021. And then let's talk about reform legislation, because now we're already 5 years into the program. Some of the benefits of the program have already perished. It's a perishable tax incentive. The whole thing is set to expire at this checkered flag here at the finish. Opportunity zone reform and extension legislation really started gaining a lot of momentum in early 2022. And in April of that year, a major piece of legislation was introduced into both chambers of Congress, the House and the Senate. In the 117th Congress, introduced the Opportunity Zone Transparency Extension and Improvement Act. Unfortunately, this failed to pass. It did get a little bit of momentum. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. And that session of Congress expired at the end of 2022. The new session of Congress, the 118th Congress, was seated in January of last year, January of 2023, and it'll run through the end of this year. Just past Election Day is when they'll have a couple months after Election Day, toward the end of the year is when that Congress expires. In September of last year, just a few short months ago, that's almost the identical reform legislation was introduced in the 118th Congress. And this is really what we're going to be talking about today. This legislation introduced in the 118th Congress on September 27th of 2023. Because the fact of the matter is, opportunity zones, again, are a perishable tax incentive. They're set to expire at the end of December 31, 2026 is the deferral date. A gain needs to be realized on or before that date in order to be eligible for investment into opportunity zones. Now, if you go out an extra 180 days beyond December 31, 2026, let's say you incur a gain on exactly December 31, 2026, you would have until June 28th of 2027. I put mid-year 2027 here. That's your last chance to invest in qualified opportunity funds, potentially. If you incur a capital gain through a partnership Schedule K1 at some point during 2026, it actually buys you a little bit more time. You would have until, I think it's about September 11th of 2027. That's really that's the final time that anybody could really realistically make an investment into a qualified opportunity fund would be September of 2027, unless it gets extended. So let's talk about the potential for opportunity zone extension. Let's also talk about just what's inside, because it's not just extension. There's a handful of other items inside this bill that was introduced in April of 2022 and then reintroduced in September of last year. And it's called the Opportunity Zones Transparency, Extension, and Improvement Act. And it does a whole lot of things. I kind of broke it up into what I figured were the 5 most important things. Number one, and this is the most important in my mind, it's going to extend the tax incentive for 2 years. So just literally where it says in the statute, December 31, 2026, I'll go back a slide, the checkered flag right here, December 31, 2026, this gets bumped forward an additional 2 years, or bumped back an additional 2 years, I should say. It gets rewritten to December 31, 2028. So that changes a few things. One, it pushes back everything 2 years. It pushes back the deadline to incur a capital gain to December 31, 2028. It pushes back the deferral of recognition of your capital gain that you reinvested Opportunity Zone funds already, potentially, or you're thinking about, till 2028. The 2028 rate would apply on that deferred gain. And then it also reopens up the 10% and the 15% basis step up. So I'll just go back to the timeline again. This basis step up right here is tied to a 7-year timeline. And this 10% basis step up is tied to a 5-year timeline. So let me explain what I mean by that. In the statute, it is written that you can achieve a 10% basis step up so long as you have invested in a qualified opportunity fund for a period of up to 5 years prior to this deferral date of 2026. So if this deferral date of 2026 gets pushed out to 2028, that also pushes out these dates, because these dates here, 2021 year end and 2019 year end, they're tied to 2026 year end. So if you push the 26 year end out 2 years, you also push out the 10% basis step up out 2 years. That would get pushed out to December 31, 2023, just a couple months ago. And it pushes out that 15% basis step up to 2021. Now, this, unfortunately, doesn't really do anything good for any potential new investors in Opportunity Zones, but it does reward retroactively people who made Opportunity Zone investments prior to those dates. I would have loved to have seen this, this reform legislation enacted in 2022 or 2023 so that it would have actually reopened the window for anybody thinking about investing in Opportunity Zones. Unfortunately, it's kind of come and gone. Maybe we can think about extending it out to 2029 or 2030 to kind of reopen that, but I'll get there later. So those are the first 2 things that this Opportunity Zone reform legislation is going to do. The third thing it's going to do is it would expand reporting requirements. So one of the major criticisms of Opportunity Zones is it's very hard to track. It's hard for the IRS to track, or hard for the Treasury Department to track, or it's hard for the federal government overall to track and report to its constituents, the American people, the effectiveness of Opportunity Zone investing. And we have some numbers as to how much capital has been invested in Opportunity Zones. I recently estimated, based on Novogradic's Q4 2023 year-end data, that it's likely that about $150 billion worth of money has already poured into Opportunity Zone investments. That's just the equity portion. But what has it done? Has it created jobs? Has it reduced poverty? Has it improved people's lives? That data is just much more nebulous. So jobs data, at the very least, will be required of funds to report on at a census tract level. I think that'll help garner a lot more support for Opportunity Zones going forward on both sides of the aisle. A fourth thing it would do is it would decertify high-income census tracts that have been designated Opportunity Zones. Opportunity Zones were designated in 2018 using data from 2015 and 2016 and a census tract map from 2010. So now we're 2024. The map's 14 years old, and the data is almost a decade old. The intention here is Opportunity Zones, some of them have been lifted out of poverty by now, or they were already on their way out of poverty prior to enactment of Opportunity Zones. Let's get rid of some of these that just don't really make sense as Opportunity Zones anymore. They're too high income. So I don't know what the exact estimate is here, but I suspect, based on conversations I've had, with some key players in the opportunity zones industry that it's probably going to be a couple hundred of opportunity zones that will be decertified and no longer made opportunity zones. Now, if you already invested in an opportunity zone tract that eventually gets decertified as a result of this legislation, you're grandfathered in. So no need to worry there. But what else this would do is it would remove some high income tracts from the Opportunity Zones program, grandfathering in people who had previously invested there. You'd be good. But it would then allow the governors of the state that had decertified opportunity zones to get another bite at the apple and to renominate new census tracts as opportunity zones. So potentially, within a few months of this legislation getting enacted, we could have a new process and a new opportunity zone map. The vast majority of the opportunity zones, there's 8,764 of them. I would suspect probably 8,500 or so would remain the same, but you might get 200 or so new opportunity zones added to the mix. Finally, the legislation would allow for a fund of funds. Currently, a qualified opportunity fund is not allowed to invest into another qualified opportunity fund. The fund has to invest directly in the qualified opportunity zone property or a qualified opportunity zone business. This would, in my opinion, make a lot of sense. Frankly, I don't know why this was prohibited in the first place. I think it's going to make transactions a lot simpler and make mergers of qualified opportunity funds a lot simpler going forward. So I like all 5 of these provisions. I think it's brilliant. This is the opportunity zone legislation that has by far gotten the most traction. And this is a screenshot of our OZ Insiders masterclass that I had with Shay Hawkins last month for OZ Insiders members. And all of the content that you're watching me present today is but a snippet of the information that Shay Hawkins presented at our OZ Insiders masterclass last month. Shay was a riot. He had come in to our meeting having just met with Governor DeWine at the Ohio Governor's Mansion. So I really appreciate Shay coming straight from a meeting with the governor, who, by the way, Governor DeWine's been, and his state of Ohio has been more supportive of opportunity zones than any other state in the union. And Shay was there to talk to him about opportunity zones. Then he came straight to us and talked to my OZ Insiders Mastermind group about what's happening with OZ legislation. Shay, for those who don't know, he is the president of a large trade association called the Opportunity Funds Association, the largest trade association associated with qualified opportunity fund investing in the U.S. He was formerly a member of Senator Tim Scott's tax staff, and it was great to have Shay on that presentation. I did want to talk about some of the key players in both the House and the Senate in terms of opportunity zones. Just kind of taking a little spin at the wheel here. We'll kind of go through each of these players one by one. By the way, this is by no means an exhaustive list of all of the individuals involved with opportunity zones legislation. Just trying to fit as many faces as I could onto one slide. But Shay brought up a number of these names during his masterclass, and I wanted to share with you a little bit about what he said. First of all, the 2 primary co-sponsors from the Senate of the original Investing in Opportunity Act of 2015, which eventually became the Opportunity Zone provision as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, were Senator Tim Scott, Republican from South Carolina, and Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey. So from the very get-go, Opportunity Zone legislation has been bipartisan. It's also been bicameral. And we'll get to that in a moment. I think that's on the next slide. Yeah, we'll get to that on the next slide. Some other key players, Representative Mike Kelly's been one of the strongest proponents of Opportunity Zones legislation, again, dating all the way back to 2015 in the House. He's a Republican from Pennsylvania. These 2 gentlemen right here, Senator Mike Crapo and Senator Ron Wyden, they are members of the Senate Finance Committee. And as we'll discuss in the next slide, the bill is kind of stalled right now in the Senate Finance Committee. And Senator Mike Crapo is the ranking Republican member of the Senate Finance Committee. He's a Republican from Idaho. Senator Ron Wyden is the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee as the Democrats control the Senate currently. He's a Democrat from Oregon, and Senator Ron Wyden's been also the most vocal opponent of opportunity zones. He made headlines a couple years ago when he issued a letter to a handful of qualified opportunity funds, asking them to report back to him how the Opportunity Zones program is working to create jobs and improve the lives of Americans. And he's been a very vocal opponent of the program. And without his support in this current session of Congress, it's unlikely that any Opportunity Zones legislation has a great chance of getting introduced into the Senate. More on that a little bit later. Republican Jason Smith, Representative Jason Smith, Congressman Jason Smith, I should say, Republican from Missouri. He is the current chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. It should be noted that he actually introduced his own small business and jobs bill at the beginning of 2013, about a year ago, and it included a lot of language about rural opportunity zones. So Representative Jason Smith, he's not a current co-sponsor on this current bill, but he knows about opportunity zones, he's aware of them, and he wants to use them to expand into rural areas. Finally, Congresswoman Terry Sewell, who Shay Hawkins called a brilliant woman. She's a Democrat from Alabama, and she's a great case of a Democrat who was initially very skeptical of opportunity zones, and she's since seen the light, and she's actually now become one of its more vocal supporters. In fact, she's even co-sponsored the current version of the reform and extension legislation that is in front of the House of Representatives and hopefully gets introduced into the Senate before too long. Okay, let's talk about updates on the bill's progress. And I've got in big red letters there, stalled, because the fact of the matter is, I think this thing is stalled, and I think this thing, frankly, is very unlikely to go anywhere during this session of Congress. And I think we're probably, at this point, going to have to wait until next year before anything happens. But I'll walk you through what has happened so far. A little bit of a revisit of the timeline in case anybody's joining late and missed that. I'm going to recap a little bit what's transpired to date in terms of legislation. So April of 2022 is when the OZ reform and extension bill was initially introduced into both chambers, both the House and the Senate. It was introduced on the same day in April of 2022 in the 117th Congress. That bill garnered 13 sponsors, co-sponsors, a handful in the House and a handful in the Senate. Frankly, that's not a lot. And then that session of Congress came and went without the bill going anywhere. There was no tax legislation for the bill to get packaged into. Moving on to the 118th Congress in September of 2023, the same legislation, virtually the same. I think there were some minor changes, but it was virtually the same legislation with those same big 5 points I talked about earlier, was reintroduced in the 118th Congress in September of 2023. It hasn't been introduced in the Senate yet, and there's only 9 House co-sponsors currently. Many of them Republican. I think it's 6 or 7 Republicans and only 2 or 3 Democrats. Congresswoman Terry Sewell being one of the Democrats. And it seems to not be going anywhere. It hasn't been introduced to the Senate yet. It has to come through the Senate Finance Committee because it's a tax bill. And as I mentioned previously, Senator Ron Wyden here, not a big fan of opportunity zones. It'd be great if he and Mike Crapo can negotiate on this and come up with some way to get opportunity zones inside of some tax legislation bill. Oh, by the way, you may have read in the news in January and February of this $78 billion House tax bill, which passed by an overwhelming majority in the House last month. It includes extensions to the child care tax credit. That's a huge Democrat priority. And then on the Republican side, it includes some extensions to some of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, some R&D credits. But there's nothing in this tax bill, unfortunately, about opportunity zones. And frankly, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but opportunity zones really just have not been a huge priority of our House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. I don't even think opportunity zones are really even on the radar for Senator Mike Crapo at this time. He should be a big proponent of them, but fact of the matter is they've got bigger fish to fry right now. They're going through some bigger issues in tax legislation. They're going through bigger issues with regards to aid in Ukraine and issues at home as well. And oh, by the way, it's a presidential election year. So the chance of any bipartisan bills getting passed, that window is closing rather quickly. Oh, one other thing that they're concerned about, they're just concerned about keeping their own jobs and getting their salaries, because the government's going to shut down any day now, except they keep passing continuing resolutions. I think we just had one a few days ago. They keep kicking that can down the road. So suffice to say, Congress is a little bit broken for the most part to begin with, and then combine that with the fact that opportunity zones really aren't a huge priority for this session of Congress. I think they've got bigger fish to fry in this session of Congress. But that said, there's a huge opportunity after this election year and heading into 2025. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, I don't see 2024 happening. I think maybe there was a window at the end of 23. I don't see 2024 happening at this point in time. I think the tax legislation in front of the Senate right now seems to have stalled, possibly for good. And now it's an election year and opportunity zones aren't even in that bill anyway. I think now is the time for the opportunity zone industry, for all of its stakeholders, to start pushing for a huge effort to make opportunity zone legislation a huge priority in whatever tax legislation comes through in 2025, because tax legislation will be a huge priority for Republicans, especially in 2025, because that is the year that the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provisions start to expire. Most of the TCJA expires in 2025. Opportunity zones and a few other provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act don't expire until 2026, but 25 will be a huge deadline for Republican leadership. No matter who's in the White House, no matter what the balance of power is, they're going to be hugely motivated to negotiate with Democrats on tax priorities. And I think especially if this $78 billion House tax bill does not end up going anywhere, the Democrats will be highly incentivized to negotiate on some tax matters, because they really, really want the child tax credit to get extended and improved. So how can you help? I'm glad you asked. Congress needs to hear from you, especially some of these members here, especially Senator Ron Wyden, Senator Mike Crapo in particular. These two members of the Senate Finance Committee, they need to hear not just that opportunity zones are helping investors and they're a great tax break and $150 billion is poured into the program, but to the extent that you or someone you know has an opportunity zone deal, an opportunity zone project that's getting underway, or maybe it's already stabilized, what has it done for the local community? How many jobs has it created? What good is Opportunity Zones doing? Those types of stories need to be told, and they need to be amplified to our representatives in Washington, D.C. Otherwise, it just will continue to not be a priority for them. Now is the time to start doing this, so that by the time tax legislation rolls around 2025, the industry's ready. I've got a lot of questions. Let's see if I'm going to take a quick look at them right now, actually. Quick look. Paul St. Pierre asks, why would Congress give a step up in basis to existing investors? It would be a retro tax benefit. So has this ever been done in tax law? Paul, it's a great question. I think it's just a relic of how the statute is currently written. I mean, they're not explicitly giving a benefit to existing investors, right? But if you look at the statute bases all of those different key deadlines around basis step-ups around that 2026 deferral date. And Congress, you know, that main top bullet point for this legislation is extending that deferral date out 2 years. So then just by virtue of simple arithmetic, it also extends out those other two dates. So Paul, I hope that answers your question. I'll get to some of these other questions toward the end of the presentation later today. But first, I did want to now shift into OZ Insiders. what OZ Insiders is. And by the way, if you liked the presentation today on OZ legislation, that brief 28-minute update or whatever it was, this is exactly what we do inside of OZ Insiders. Usually I do it with a guest. I do it with a guest instructor. I had Shay Hawkins, president of the Opportunity Funds Association, present at our masterclass last month. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit more about what OZ Insiders is, what else we do inside of this mastermind group, who we are, and why you might be a good fit. It's not for everybody, but you might be a good fit for it. These are the two founders of OZ Insiders. You might recognize the bloke on the left. That's me, Jimmy Atkinson. There's my co-founder, Andy Hagens, in the very handsome looking green blazer. Quick disclaimer about OZ Insiders, and about opportunity zones in general, by the way. Opportunity zones can't make a bad deal good. A deal has to be able to stand on its own. It has to be a good deal for opportunity zones to make sense, right? Doesn't that make sense? And likewise, OZ Insiders can't take a bad deal and make it good. It can't take a bad strategy and make it good, right? That makes sense, don't you think? So you're not going to instantly close out your capital raise the minute you join OZ Insiders, if that's what you're looking to do, or you're not instantly going to become a brilliant investor just by joining OZ Insiders. But what we do help you do is we help you become more informed, more insightful, more aware of the trends happening within the opportunity zones industry. And we help you take your opportunity zone strategy to the next level, whatever that might be. And that's what we do. And we can do that as a shortcut. A lot of people come to us because they're very capable people. They're very intelligent people. They could figure out opportunity zones on their own, but maybe they're new. Maybe they've only been doing opportunity zones for a month or 2 months or a year, and they're sick of wasting time on dead ends. They just want to come to us. We're the central repository of all OZ knowledge, basically, and not just me, but just everybody I know within my network in my Rolodex. And I can help you get connected so you don't have to waste any more time on dead ends. And the three challenges that I often hear from anybody executing any type of opportunity zone strategy, whether you're an investor, whether you're a real estate developer, whether you're a small business owner or a venture capitalist, whether you're a professionally managed fund company, a manager of a fund, three challenges that I hear oftentimes. Challenge number one is no one else is facing my unique opportunity zone problems, right? Like I've got this really weird situation. This is really unique and it's impossible. Challenge number two, and this one's true actually, opportunity zones are confusing and it's hard to find the true experts and everything takes too long. I say it's true for most people. I think we've established a pretty good shortcut system based on just being in the industry for the last 5 years. Challenge number three I hear a lot is it's hard to stay in the know on the latest trends and best practices for opportunity zone related issues. And that can be true also. Let me tackle these one by one. Challenge number one, no one else is facing my unique OZ problems. We've been there. We've done that. We have over 20,000 people on our email list. I field emails and calls from different opportunity zone stakeholders every week. And I've heard just about every question you can imagine. And when I get stumped, I know exactly who to pass that person off to, who to direct that person to, because I have a Rolodex of some of the finest minds in the opportunities in this industry. I don't claim to know it all about opportunity zones. I know a lot. I know a lot to be dangerous. I've been doing it for a long time, but I think what makes OZ Insiders really beneficial is not just me and my knowledge, but the connections I have to some of the top professionals in the industry. You give me a question, I don't know the answer to, I'll say, oh, you got to talk to Mike, or you got to talk to Ashley, or you got to talk to Andrew. And I know exactly who to pass you off to. Challenge number two is opportunity zones are confusing. It's hard to find the true experts and everything takes too long. And that can be true if you don't know where to turn. But for us, it's pretty easy because we've been doing this since 2018. We have a great Rolodex. I think it's probably the largest Rolodex or the largest network in the entire space. Like I said, we have over 20,000 people on our email list. I have countless professionals and advisors on my phone, and essentially we can be a shortcut to help you get to where you need to go much more quickly than if you undertake that endeavor on your own. Challenge number three, it's hard to stay in the know on the latest OZ trends and best practices. And I think that's true as well. There aren't a lot of news outlets that cover opportunity zones. There aren't a lot of groups that cover opportunity zones, but the OZ Insiders Network is a community of experts, and that's all we do at OZ Insiders is we live and breathe opportunity zones. We cover the OZ industry like no other. Andy and I host OZ News Hour every month that recaps the top stories from that month in opportunity zones. We essentially, OZ Insiders can help you stay in the know like no other place. So let me ask you a question. Do you want to hear more about what's inside opportunity zones? Do you want to hear more about what the benefits are to joining Opportunity Zone Insiders, OZ Insiders? Who wants to hear it? Who wants to hear what's inside? Who wants to hear some of the many benefits that you get when you join OZ Insiders? Got a few hands going up. Got a few yeses. Okay. Let me show you what's inside. Here's what you're going to get when you join OZ Insiders. I mentioned our Rolodex or our network. Kind of use those two terms interchangeably. You'll get access to my connections, essentially, when you join OZ Insiders. We have what I think is the largest Rolodex or largest network in the Opportunity Zones industry. I've hosted the Opportunity Zones podcast since, I think the first episode came out in November of 2018. So about 5.5 years. We're closing in on our 300th episode. That's a lot of interviews I've done. And I've talked to countless people outside of that podcast format as well. We've hosted countless OZ pitch days. This will be our 11th one coming up on Thursday. We've hosted countless webinars like these. There's no other group that's more plugged in than our group is. So when you join OZ Insiders, you're going to get access to that network, that Rolodex, that all those connections that I have. I can help make those connections for you as well. You're also going to get access to our live monthly masterclasses. If you enjoyed today's presentation on Opportunity Zones legislation updates, that's exactly what we do inside of OZ Insiders. Every month, we host a different masterclass. You can see that my presentation today was but a small snippet of the presentation that Shay Hawkins and I gave last month in February for the OZ Insiders group. Some other masterclasses we have coming up in the future. I'm actually going to be the presenter. I don't have a guest. I'm the main guy for next month's, or this month's, I should say, Opportunity Zones masterclass taking place on Tuesday, March 12th. I'm going to be discussing raising Opportunity Zone equity. Jill Homan's going to join us in April for diligencing Opportunity Zone funds and deals. Michael Mayer is presenting the May masterclass on, it says OZ investing topic TBD. We have updated this now on our live website. If you go to ozinsiders.com and hit calendar, you can see a more up-to-date version of this. He's going to be presenting a masterclass on financial modeling for Opportunity Zone deals. Brett is joining us. Brett Siglin is joining us in June to present on financing Opportunity Zone deals. And then Jerry Ryson is joining us in July for Opportunity Zone development joint ventures. So that's just a small sampling of some of the masterclasses that we have coming up in the future. So when you join, you're going to get access to our Rolodex, all of our connections, what I believe is the largest network in the industry. You're going to get access to our live monthly masterclasses, much in the same format as this webinar today. They're interactive, they're educational. We go back and forth and have conversations with our members during those webinars. It's very personal and it's very intimate, and it's just a great way to share knowledge. And you saw a list of some of the topics we have coming up. In addition to that, we record all of our masterclasses. And when you join, you get instant access to our on-demand library of every previous masterclass that we've done. Here's a small sampling of two of them. By the way, we do have Shay's up here as well, but this is an old screenshot. Andrew Daup gave a presentation on Opportunity Zone PPMs and subscription docs in January. So that one's available to hit play when you join and log into your dashboard. And then Ashley gave a presentation on how to structure Opportunity Zone deals in December. So those are two of the many Opportunity Zone masterclasses we have available inside of our on-demand library. So what you're going to get access to our Rolodex, our huge network of connections of Opportunity Zone professionals. You're going to get access to our live monthly masterclasses every single month. You get to join live, interact with our guest speaker, and learn about a different Opportunity Zone related topic. You'll have access to our on-demand library of every previous masterclass that we've ever hosted. And in addition to that, you're also going to get 24/7 access to our private chat group. You can see, here's a screenshot from the chat group this is a few months old, this screenshot here, but a little back and forth between Michael and Andy and myself when I was in Washington, D.C. at the Novogradac conference late last year. And that's a picture of me interviewing Ashley Tyson for the Opportunity Zone podcast. Thanks, John Vachon, for taking that picture. He was there. John Vachon is an insider. And there's a little bit more that goes on in this private messaging group than just me posting pictures of myself, but there's talk about deals, there's talk about off-market deals, there's talk about compliance, there's talk about news, just any opportunity zone related news. And then we also post reminders of our OZ Insiders events. So what you're going to get access to our Rolodex. You're going to get access to our live monthly masterclasses. You're going to get an on-demand library of all previous masterclasses. You're going to get access to that private chat group so you can interact with me, with Andy, with all of our other members. Whenever you want to just ping us in that chat group, it can be easier than email. I'm more responsive there as well. And then you'll also get invitations to our private in-person events. And here's a couple screenshots of some of our previous in-person events. Here's the one that's coming up very soon here, just next week in Dallas, Texas. I'm hosting a private dinner at Albernay's, the Oaklawn location in Dallas. I think it's the top steakhouse in Dallas. And we've got I think 8 or 9 people RSVP'd for that dinner currently. And I'd love it if you were to join today. You get invitation to that dinner, steak dinner on me, on the OZ Insiders. It's just going to be a nice evening of brilliant meal and hopefully some brilliant conversation with some brilliant minds as well. So especially if you're local, if you're in the DFW area, this is a particularly great time to join OZ Insiders. But even if not, come on out. Join us for steak dinner at Albernay's Monday, March 11th. So what you're going to get. Quick recap. You're going to get access to our Rolodex, all those connections I talked about. You're going to get access to our live monthly masterclasses that we host every single month. You also get access to our on-demand library of all previous masterclasses, 24/7 access to our private chat group, invitations to our private in-person events. I value this whole package at close to $28,000. Now, I'm not going to charge you $28,000 for this, obviously. That's way too much. That's ridiculous. But if all OZ Insiders did was give you access to our Rolodex and just give you shortcuts to people you need to talk to, professionals that can help advise you, would it be worth it? If all OZ Insiders did was provide you with invitations to our in-person meetings with leading professionals, some of those brilliant minds in private equity real estate, and opportunity zones, would it be worth it? By the way, we're having a couple of other dinners later this year as well. We're going to be at Gibson's in May in Chicago, and we're going to be at a restaurant to be determined in November in Washington, D.C., adjacent to the Novogradac Opportunity Zones conference, which will be hosted there the following day. More on that later. If all this did was give you the highest quality educational content in our industry and help you stay in the know and stay relevant within the Opportunity Zone space, would it be worth it? Well, I encourage you to get started now. You can head to ozinsiders.com to learn more and to sign up. Again, we're estimating the total value of this entire package to be worth close to $28,000. We're charging just $299 per month. Yes, there is a year option as well. If you want to sign up for a full year, you can save 17%. It's $29.99 for the year. In addition to all of the benefits I mentioned, we also offer a 60-day money-back guarantee. So if for any reason you join OZ Insiders and then a week later or a month later or up to 2 months later, you decide, you know what, this isn't for me for whatever reason, no questions asked, just let us know, send us an email, we'll refund you that money that day, get your account canceled, no questions asked, no hard feelings. It's that easy. So final recap of what you're going to get. You're going to get access to our Rolodex. You're going to get access to our live monthly masterclasses. You're going to get access to our on-demand library of all of our previous masterclasses, 24/7 access to our private chat group and the mobile app where you can send those messages to me and Andy and the other OZ Insiders. You're going to get invitations to our private in-person events. We have 3 on the docket for this year. Total value, $27,800. Get started now. Scan that QR code on your screen, or you can head to ozinsiders.com. It's just $299 per month. There's also an annual option you can check out on that webpage. And it includes a 60-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee. Can't go wrong with joining OZ Insiders. We have over 40 members now who have taken the plunge and joined OZ Insiders, and we're looking to add more and more every week. But wait, there's more. I promised you a special offer today. So in addition to getting access to our Rolodex, getting access to our live monthly masterclass, getting access to our on-demand library of all previous masterclasses, getting 24/7 access to our private chat group, and getting invitations to our private in-person events. There's going to be 3 of them this year. Today only, if you join today by midnight tonight, you will also get a strategy call with me. We don't always offer this. I don't always have room in my calendar to get on the phone with everybody, but if you join today, you'll also get a strategy call with me. It's a 30-minute call, and I can help you just pretty much instantly take whatever shortcut you need to take, depending on where you are in your opportunity zone strategy and what your opportunity zone strategy is. If I do say myself, I think it's highly valuable. So get on the phone. Get on the phone with me. So here's a total recap of what you're going to get now. You're going to get access to our Rolodex. You're going to get access to all of our live monthly masterclasses. You're going to get access to our on-demand library of previous masterclasses, 24/7 access to our private chat group, invitations to our private in-person events. We got 3 coming up this year: Dallas, Chicago, Washington, D.C. They're going to be pretty much all roughly the same format. Nice steak dinner, maybe a little speech by me, and really just great meal and great company. And then today only, if you join today before midnight tonight, you'll also get a strategy call with Jimmy. That's me. Total value, $28,800. Obviously, I'm not going to charge you that much, guys. But you can get started now at ozinsiders.com. It's only $299 per month. There is an annual option, $29.99 per year. You can save 17%. And both of those options include a 60-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee. So scan that QR code or visit ozinsiders.com now to get started and participate with us more regularly, just in format like this, where we go through OZ legislation or some other OZ topic. It's one of the benefits you'll get. I have a whole bunch of questions here. Let's see which questions I can answer. Give me a second to take a sip of water here, though. I've been talking nonstop for 50 minutes. Okay. A lot of questions here. James Hetherington says, I bought some OZ units and they have a large loss. Sure looked solid when I bought. Apartments in Florida. Hard to sell opportunity zone deals if this is a flop. That's a key part of opportunity zone investing, and I would say of investing in particular, but especially investing in alternative investment funds and especially ground up real estate deals. They are risky. They do carry a certain amount of risk. And James, I'm sorry to hear that that your OZ units have a large loss. I don't think that type of loss is confined to opportunity zone investing. I would say that's always a risk with any investment you make, and certainly there are riskier types of investments. You can invest in blue chip stocks. You can invest in U.S. Treasuries. Those are going to be on your safer end of the spectrum. You can invest in Bitcoin. That might be on your more speculative end of the spectrum. I would say opportunity zone investing, and this is a fair point to point out, James, and to make me point out, I would say it is rather high risk, high reward. This is a capital gains incentive type of investment program. And in order for it to make sense as an investor for the tax benefit, you got to have big capital gains. And big capital gains really only come if you take on a pretty significant amount of risk at the front end. And opportunity zone deals are such that they have to include either ground up new construction or substantial gutting and rehabbing of existing assets. So that always does carry on a bit of risk. Let's move on to, let's see, James Hetherington again. Bought OZ, let's see, they are now below 65. Okay, so he's lost 35 cents on the dollar. Of course, economics should be the prime consideration when investing in opportunities on deals, not the income tax angles. The OZ units had good-looking economics, so what happened? James, I don't know what happened without looking at the deal itself. I do know that it's been a tough time for the real estate market in general, and that there's always risk with ground-up construction deals. There have been issues recently related to coming out of the pandemic. There were staffing shortages, not enough contractors to go around. The price of everything went way up. We had inflation. Now we have interest rates at very high levels. So, one or all of those factors could have contributed. There are a lot of opportunity zone deals out there, a lot of real estate deals that aren't even opportunity zone deals that have undergone some significant stress. The nice thing is opportunity zone investing encourages a 10+ year hold. So, if you're marking these to market at 65 down from 100, I don't know how many years in you are, James, but and I don't know what the status of your particular deal is, but there's always time for it to turn around potentially. So anyways, I wanted to address that. Hope that helps. Yeah, not all investments are a sure thing. Some stuff goes to zero, right? So anyways, let's move on to the next one. In order to qualify opportunity rentals for an enterprise zone project, what is a safe number of rental units? That's an interesting question. I'm not talking about enterprise zones. Enterprise zones is a completely different type of program. So I don't really know how to address that question. I'm going to put that one aside. Is there CPE credit for this? No, there is not. Good question, though. Sometimes we offer CPE credit, but this one does not include CPE credit. Thomas asks, I just got my OZ building permit approved in the Florida Keys. Congrats. But to get my allocation, of which the city of Marathon grants me, start my build will take 12 more years. Ooh, you can't start your build for 12 more years. Do I have to notify the IRS I need a 12-year extension to start construction? Thomas, I think you need help from a professional attorney, potentially to unwind that as an opportunity zone project, because especially depending on if you took on any investor equity or if you have your own capital gains that you've invested as equity into the deal, I think your deal is probably not going to work as an opportunity zone investment. Sorry to say. Typically, you need to begin construction within, I think it's 3 to 5 years is about as much time as you can possibly go. 12 years, I don't think that's going to work. I would encourage you to consult with an attorney. Email me offline if you need help with that. You can email us at info@opportunitydb.com. I'll try to redirect you. Good question. Kirk asks, how much time do we have? We got about 5 more minutes or so left until the top of the hour. So we'll answer as many questions as I can before we hit the top of the hour. If legislation to extend does not pass, this is a question from Kirk. He asks, an investor that comes into an OZ project now still can qualify for the 10-year hold for the final step up in basis. Is that correct? Yes, Kirk, that is correct. The basis step up to fair market value after a 10-year hold is not contingent upon opportunity zone legislation getting extended. So like I mentioned toward the beginning of my presentation, when I went through that timeline, realistically speaking, you have until potentially mid-year 2027, maybe even until September of 2027, depending on how your gain was realized. You have until 2027 to make an investment. And then as long as you hold that investment for at least 10 years, so then in 2037, you can start thinking about disposing of the asset or selling the asset. At that transaction, it would still step up to fair market value. You'd still have zero capital gain bill to pay, regardless of whether or not the legislation goes through. So good question. The legislation going through would really just be nice because it would give investors an additional 2 years to continue to incur capital gains and roll them over into opportunity zone investments. If you already have an opportunity zone investment that you fund with gains that are recognized prior to the end of 2026, you're going to be fine. Okay, one more question here. Let's see. Want to know what is going on at the only PTP that is an OZ deal? I'm not sure what PTP means. Excuse me. Let's see. That is OZ. How do you expect to peddle OZ deals if your flagship deal is the Titanic? I'm not quite sure what that one's referring to, but if you want to clarify, let me know. I don't know of anybody investing in the Titanic. Good question, though. Let's see. Amber, are there any masterclasses that demonstrate the tax structuring on the business and personal tax returns? Amber, currently, No. I have booked our master classes through August. I actually didn't show August on that screenshot. I couldn't fit it on there. The one in August is raising OZ, or let's see, marketing OZ deals to RIAs, I believe, or raising OZ equity from RIAs and broker dealers, something to that effect. Thomas, I will type the email address into the chat. Yes, give me a second to do that. But Amber, I'm taking suggestions for master classes later in the year. So September, October, November, December, I think that'd be a great suggestion. I'm going to copy and paste it right now and send it to my team. Business and personal tax returns. Thomas Nardone asks, can I type that email address into the chat? I will do that right now. So that was info@opportunitydb.com. So there that is, Thomas. I hope you can find that. So Amber, I think I've answered your question. Currently, no, but I'm taking suggestions, and I think that's a great suggestion for a future masterclass, maybe in the fall, late summer, early fall. What time we got? We got a few more minutes here. Can an OZ fund invest in an OZ property for improvement costs and existing owners stay into the property? Then if the asset held for 10 years, receive a waiving of the capital gains? I'm not 100% sure I understand that question. OZ property for improvement costs. By the way, if I didn't answer your question, I would encourage you to come to OZ Pitch Day on Thursday, and especially the segment with Ashley Tyson, which is occurring in the afternoon. He knows more about opportunity zones than I do, at least from a technical point of view. And he would know more about what this one is. So anonymous attendee, I'm sorry, I can't really address this one. Existing owners stay in the property. The existing owner leases the property from you. I guess that'd be, well, existing owner. The property needs to be acquired by a qualified opportunity fund, and it cannot be from a related party. So you might run into a related party issue there, but I don't know if I have enough information to properly address that question. Well, I'm going to move on to the next one. Lowell asks, is there a technique for displaying the impact that the figures you displayed would accept as proof of OZ benefits? Jobs and income migration. Lowell, there's not really a best practice on a technique for displaying the impact, but I would say I think the jobs figure is the single most important one. How many jobs has your opportunity zone project created, and in which census tracts? And if you have any anecdotes on the types of jobs, the types of salaries, and the types of people who are getting the jobs, are they local residents? I think that would all help. And a lot of this is just going to have to be anecdotal. I don't think there's, to my knowledge, nobody's really come up with a one size fits all type of technique for displaying just data. I think some of it's going to have to be anecdotal. That's my guess. Great question though. Thanks for your support. Dan asks, can OZ fund invest into improvements to make substantial investments into an existing building and the current owner remains in the deal? Oh, I see. This is clarifying the question from earlier. And yet the entire deal gets the waiving of the 10-year hold cap gain waiving. Okay, so OZ invest into improvements to make substantial investments in an existing building. It's really tough for a current owner to remain in the deal under the statutory and regulatory requirements, Dan, because currently, I forget if this is statutory or regulatory, but it's suffice to say, one of the requirements of the program is that a qualified opportunity fund has to acquire the asset after December 22nd, 2017. And it cannot be acquired from a related third party. So I would encourage you to consult with an attorney or email me if you need some guidance on that. And read about related party transactions and opportunity zones. So hopefully that answers your question or helps address it. The fact of the matter is I don't fully know all the details there, and I think you need to consult with an attorney. Let's see. Ted asks, can you please explain the tax treatment on net cash flow distributions during the 10-year hold? Can you reinvest those distributions back into the fund? So tax treatment on net cash flow, they're treated just like net cash flow on any type of investment of this type. I'm assuming I'm going to assume it's a real estate investment that you're talking about. So you're getting some lease payments most likely, in more of a plain vanilla deal. Those are just treated as ordinary income. Now they can oftentimes be offset by depreciation within the qualified opportunity zone asset itself. If the fund is depreciating the asset over time, then that can help offset those distributions to you for tax purposes. But they are treated as ordinary income. Can you reinvest those distributions back in the fund? You can, but they're not considered gains to my knowledge. So they wouldn't achieve any of the tax advantages. So it wouldn't be opportunity zone equity that you'd be putting into the fund. It'd just be non-capital gains dollars, so they wouldn't be eligible to receive any of the treatment. Hope that answers that question. We're a little bit over time now. If you got to cut loose, I don't blame you. I'll try to stay on and answer a few more of these questions before I hop off. I did want to just recap OZ Insiders one more time. This is what we do inside of OZ Insiders on a regular basis. I help connect you with experts, with other Opportunity Zone insiders. You get access to our live monthly masterclasses, access to our on-demand library of all previous masterclasses. And if you like this presentation today, you're going to love our masterclass series. 24/7 access to our private chat group, invitations to our private in-person events. We've got a dinner coming up next week in Dallas. We've got a dinner coming up in Chicago in May and a dinner coming up in November. I believe it's going to be on election night in our nation's capital, in the Georgetown neighborhood, close to where the Novogradac Opportunity Zones Summit is going to be the following day on the Wednesday after Election Day. So stay tuned for that. We're still trying to finalize the details there. Dan asks how to email you again. So Dan, I'm going to type in the answer. It's info@OpportunityDb.com. Let's see. So anyways, we're at the top of the hour. We're a couple minutes past top of the hour. Go ahead and get out of here if you need to, but scan that QR code before you go. Learn more about OZ Insiders. Consider joining. It's not for everyone, but it might be for you, depending on where you are in your OZ journey. Like I said, we have over 40 members in the group now. A lot of people are coming to the dinner in Dallas next week. I'm really looking forward to continuing to run this until they tell me to stop. It's been a lot of fun so far. And we just launched it back in November. So the fact that we're at 40 members already, really optimistic about the future of this group. And I hope to get your support and hope for you to join today. Let's see. Kirk has an OZ project that was just granted entitlements. Congratulations. That's a big step. What's the best way to find investors looking for an OZ project to invest in? Kirk, great question. That's what we do primarily at OpportunityDB, which is my OZ marketplace platform, essentially. Kirk, you should send me an email. Did I send you the email already? Was that you? No, that was Dan and Thomas. So Kirk, I would encourage you to email me. I have ideas for you. That's what we do at OpportunityDB. It's also what we do at OZ Pitch Day. By the way, it's going to be the topic of the masterclass that I'm going to give next week at OZ Insiders for OZ Insiders members only, is how to raise equity for an OZ deal. So hopefully that helps answer your question. But essentially, the first thing you need to do is, you might want to consider creating a qualified opportunity fund that you can structure in a way that you can accept investment from outside investors. There's a lot of steps. There's a lot of additional steps you need. First of all, you need a good deal. It's great that it's already entitled. You've made some good progress there. You should get together some subscription docs, a PPM. You need a pro forma, some financial modeling. You need a pitch deck. And then you need to announce to the world what your deal is and try to get some investors. So that's part of what we're going to do at OZ Pitch Day on Thursday of this week. You're probably not going to be ready to present at that OZ Pitch Day, but I would like to talk to you, Kirk, if you want to reach out. You can reach me at info@OpportunityDB.com. I would encourage you at the very least to attend OZ Pitch Day to kind of see how other deals are pitching their OZ deals to investors in an attempt to raise equity for those deals. So I'm going to type in my email into this one as well. Email me. Boom. There we go. Okay. We got a few more questions still. You guys are great. very engaged audience today. We had well over 100 people here also, which was fantastic. Walt asks, I found that most/almost all of the different tax software packages that CPAs use do not have a feature to import OZ funds. Is there any effort underway to reach out to some of the more popular tax software companies so they can include and update their software? Walt, I don't know of any type of effort underway. That is a good question. I would suspect that most CPAs would have to make some sort of manual calculation to account for that. That's really interesting. I've had this question a few times before. I wasn't aware of the fact that this was still an issue. I do know that the consumer facing tax software, the vast majority of those don't allow for, it's Form 8997 is the form you're talking about. A lot of those don't allow for that form to be included either. This is a specialty type of tax program, and you really need a CPA who knows what he's doing. Or I have found that Tax Act, not TurboTax, not H&R Block, not any of those others. At least this was the case last year. I haven't checked for the 23 year, but Tax Act, I know, does allow for Form 8997 to be used for whatever that's worth. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. Christopher asked, does training credits weigh in as jobs created would? It would help, Chris. If you have a story where you're offering training credits, I'd love to hear that story. So send me more about that. That's interesting. Rachel asks, are opportunities on investments great return for HUD subsidized cooperative for profit? Rachel, I'm going to level with you. I don't know a whole lot about HUD. I know that there are some OZ deals that incorporate some HUD programs, affordable housing tax credit being one of them. I think you might have to reach out to somebody else, though, who has a greater awareness of HUD initiatives. I can plug you in with somebody if you shoot me an email. I'm going to type an answer to my email right now. It's info@opportunitydb.com. And then last one I got here, Arthur asked, if two companies are publicly traded and company A buys company B with a stock swap and the premium is 40% of company B stock, does this trigger capital gains? And if so, what would be taxed in the year of the sale? Arthur, I got to tell you, that question is above my pay grade. I don't know the answer to that question. That is a very specific tax related question. And I don't know. And I think you'd have to consult with, I would encourage you to consult with your investment advisor if you have one. Otherwise, shoot me an email and I'll see if I can dig around for that one. So I'm going to type in my email here as well. Email me info@opportunitydb.com. Anything else in the chat? A lot of, we do have a few questions here in the chat too. Let's see. Okay. Walt asks, it took much time to find the answer, but for Pennsylvania residents, Pennsylvania does follow the Fed tax guideline for opportunity zones. It appears every state has their own policy on its best to reside in a tax-friendly state. Most CPAs are unaware of the tax treatment of OZs. Okay, yeah, so basically, Walt, that's a great point. The vast majority of states do conform fully with the federal opportunity zone tax policy, or they don't have a federal, or they don't have capital gains tax to begin with. So I'm in Texas. Texas doesn't have to conform because Texas doesn't have a capital gains tax rate. There are a handful of states that do not conform, though, or they have explicitly opted out of conforming. New York is one such state that actually their state legislature took the initiative to explicitly opt out of federal conformity with the OZ initiative. I think that was last year or the year before. So New York has some issues. California does not conform. And there's a handful of others. I can't remember off the top of my head. I know North Carolina is one of them. I want to say Massachusetts is one of them as well. There's a handful of others. If you email me, I've got a map somewhere if you want to know all of those states. Let's see. Amber is just replying to Walt saying, yeah, that's what I find is the case. Yep. You gotta discuss this stuff with some tax professionals. Okay. Rob wants to know any live events this year in Boston or anywhere in the Northeast. Rob, that's a great question. No, we don't have anything planned for the Northeast this year. I would love to get out to New York at some point. I know that's not Boston, sorry, but I'd love to get out to New York at some time, probably next year. And is the rate per person or per organization? Good question, Rob. It is per person. We do have a corporate rate as well, though. Those rates are not listed on our website explicitly, but there is a little line about it. If you have questions about our corporate rate, you can email us. Go to ozinsiders.com, scroll down to the part of the page where I display the monthly and the annual options. If you go just below there, there's a little line about the corporate rate. And you can learn more about that. Let's see. I think that's it. Rob, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We're way over time now. I thought we'd get out of here in 45 minutes, but we had, I got to say, this was, I think, the most popular webinar I've done in quite some time. Really appreciate everybody's attendance, everybody's curiosity about OZs, everybody's curiosity about OZ Insiders, and everybody's curiosity about the Opportunity Zone legislation. Fingers crossed it gets passed at some point, but I think it's probably going to be next year. In the meantime, let's do our best to tell the good stories about Opportunity Zones, get this thing extended. In the meantime, I would love it if you could join OZ Insiders. If you feel like it's right for you, or you want to give it a try, scan that QR code or visit ozinsiders.com to learn more. Thank you, everybody. This has been fun. We'll do it again soon. Take care.